Well, we're going to listen to this technocrat. Apparently, he's been analyzing facts and figures for 16 years at TriMet, and he's going to make the case that all the max ridership decline is as a result of the end of the fareless square, with the most decline at the Lloyd district. Of course, you know, it makes perfect sense that that would be true. But I also think there's other factors involved with the decline of max ridership. So of course, I want to dig into this a little more, you know, and just take their word for it. Having been watching TriMet for years and having worked at TriMet for years, I have an idea of how they think in terms of when they present facts to you. If, for example, when I was a driver and they didn't like something I was doing, they would present facts to me, you know, and I would only be able to evaluate these facts after they were presented to me, because TriMet never tells you what they're thinking ahead of time. They will send you some kind of letter saying we want to talk to you. They'll let some time go in between when they sent that letter and when they actually talk to you, but they won't give you any indication of exactly what they're going to talk to you about. They leave you guessing. It's a psychological warfare, as far as I'm concerned. It is. So when the facts were presented to me, I would see them and I would evaluate them, and I get a pretty good idea of how they think when it comes to presenting facts that they say are facts. You know, this is their version of it. There's always two sides to every story and everything. Okay, it's not just TriMet's side. You know, in TriMet land, TriMet's side is always factual. If you look at any of their current stuff, they put forth the argument that everything they say is true and everything everybody else says is false. Well, anybody with any brains at all knows that that's completely ridiculous, and the fact that they even support the premise that they're always right and everybody else is always wrong completely ruins any credibility they might have had. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, as far as any rational thinking person is concerned, they're not going to give you an accurate picture of anything because they have an agenda and they're going to follow that agenda. So I looked at the monthly totals on the max, and when they first eliminated the fareless square, it did drop by 10,000 rides in a month, or I guess they call it weekday rides. Well, 10,000 during the week, and 3,000 on Saturday, and about 8,000 on Sunday. So I mean, there was a fairly decent 10% decrease. Now you would imagine that after that initial, we don't do fareless square anymore, it would drop and stay pretty dry. Of course, they didn't really start this stormtrooper technique until later. I don't think it was until later. I'm not sure exactly the date that McFarland decided to stick the stormtroopers onto the rail riders. But what I've noticed here, you know, if you just look at the weekday totals, okay, right after before they eliminated the fareless square, it was 131,000 weekday rides. They eliminate fareless square September, 121,000. Well, it's actually 122,000. The next month, ridership actually went up to 125,000. Then the next month, it actually went down 10 more thousand to 115,000. Then it went down another 10,000. And then it went back up 8,000. And then it went up further 2,000. And then it was steady. And then it went up. Actually, max is actually increasing based on the figures that I'm looking at. So, I mean, they keep comparing it to the last year. And I suppose the 10% does seem to be rational. I feel, however, that there are other factors involved in the max decline. One of them is the fares are too high, okay, and the fare inspections, they're a little bit too brutal. The broken ticket machines, it's just been a scourge on TriMet reputation, and their attitude with the broken ticket machines, it's just horrible. I mean, it's the picture of tyranny. I also started wondering, all right, let's compare bus ridership before the end of free bus rides in downtown and after. Well, guess what? Free bus rides ended at the end of 2009, and the TriMet dashboard, where all these statistics are kept, is at the beginning of 2010. So there's no way I can actually find statistics for buses before and after the bus fareless square Anyway, I just want to look at that. I have always questions about the way these people present. They have an agenda. The agenda is cover their ass. How do we make ourselves look not responsible for anything? We know this. We all of us that have watched them work there know that they're not going to take responsibility for anything. They never do. They don't want to. They're not going to do it. They're going to always find an external factor for everything that happens there that isn't positive. Let's watch this guy talk about it.
Steve Callis of our analysis group to actually describe a little bit about what we know about the free rail zone ridership, because we've had a number of questions from board members and others about that over a period of time. So Steve?
Okay. First of all, in your packet, I think you see some graphs. I thought we'd go over a little bit of a historical ridership. I don't know if you've seen, I've been at TriMet for 16 years collecting ridership information. So I've got graphs kind of going back to 1999 just to show some historical growth trends. And the first one is a kind of a weekly system-wide ridership. So this is weekly, daily, average weekday ridership plus Saturday and Sunday. And you can see overall that we've had a pretty good increasing trend that's going through, and I've highlighted some significant events. You can see whenever there's a MAX line open that we see a spike in overall ridership. And then if you take a look in the spring of 2008, when gas was approaching $5 a gallon, we saw a huge increase, a large spike in ridership. And then soon after that, we all know, was the recession that came through, and there was some associated service cuts along with that are really decreased our growth in ridership. It still overall was growing a little bit, but definitely had a much smaller decline. And then you see recently how there's been a little bit of a decline in ridership, how it's been dropping. And then the next one you take a look is breaking it out by mode. So if you want to take a look at a weekday fixed ridership, you can see that bus ridership pretty much was flat throughout most of the early 2000s through 2008. Again, there was the dot-com recession, and again too there was, as we added new MAX lines as well too through there, but it was fairly growth. But you look at the large increase of when gas was it really spiked up when gas in the spring of 2008, summer when gas was 5,000, and then of course the recession was going through with associated service cuts. But you take a look at the last several months, it's actually been kind of rebounding and increasing a little bit over the last few months, which is very encouraging. The next one shows the weekly MAX light rail ridership, and you can see the overall growth. It was pretty steady growth rate on MAX all the way going through, and you see the spikes of every single new line that's opened, as well too, the red, the green, the yellow, and then a little bit of a service cuts that kind of slowed the growth a little bit. But then you can take a look at the last 6 months, and you can see there's a significant drop on the trend going through there. So that's one I want to talk about. And then lastly, just to show West, how West was been steadily growing since it's been opening. However, pretty good growth, and then just showing that it's been leveling off over the last 6-7 months. We did see large growth in West ridership. There was remember a storm, I believe it was in 2010, that attracted a lot of riders on West, kind of a winter storm, and they stayed. So that was very good. So that's what we on West. So that's kind of a background of historical ridership, just to put things in perspective. I want to go on to the next on the table. Now this shows the elimination of what happened with the elimination of the free rail zone. First of all, you can see Neil just gave the ridership numbers showing that on MAX, comparing this spring to spring 2012, overall the ridership is down on a weekly basis about 8%, a little bit higher on weekends, a little larger increase of decline on weekends. So that's the top showing the decline. So you can see overall on average weekdays we lost about 8,500 boarding rides a day. But down below, the next chart shows the ridership within the free rail zone. And so our estimate of previous, in spring of 2012, of when we actually had the free rail zone in place, that on an average weekday there were over 27,000 rides within the free rail zone. So these are traveling just within the free rail zone, and about a little bit lower on weekends, but similar. And then comparison of spring 2013, so this would be 6 months after the elimination of the free rail zone, that you can see that we've dropped about 33% of the ridership within the free rail zone. So on weekdays, a decline of over 9,000, similar on Saturday, and of course a little bit less on Sunday. But what's significant about this is that this is pretty much explains almost all the ridership loss that we've seen on MAX. So it really does show that without the elimination of the free rail zone, our ridership on MAX would be flat, would be similar to what we've seen in the past. So all that 8% that we discussed about on the system monthly is primarily due to the free rail zone. So I want to point out a couple other items too, is that we've seen most of the largest decline we've seen in elimination of the free rail zone is within the Lloyd district. I think there were a lot of people that were, especially on weekdays, that were doing the commuting trips since it was free, so they were parking in the Lloyd district and riding. So we have seen a small increase of a bus ridership across the Steel Bridge. So I think some of them have moved over to the closest bus route that they're taking. And then also some of the Portland streetcar as well, too. We don't know the impacts, but now we have the East Side streetcar, so that could be some of the decline as well, too. The convention center ridership is not down as much as other locations as well, too, so perhaps there's been less of an impact, or the convention pass seems to be successful because ridership at the convention center seems to be holding steady, which is a good sign. And again, we're not really sure where the free rail zone trips have gone. We assume that many of them within downtown are probably just walking. But again, most of the decline we've seen is within the Lloyd district and downtown. And last thing I just want to point out too, that there really is no loss in revenue from this. These are all fareless trips that we've lost on the MAX, so I think that is something else to point out.